Hello, this is John Thornburg, the headmaster at Malden Catholic, and welcome to our Midsummer update. I know many of our families are curious on what our fall reopening plans will look like, and as we've been working through that, this webinar serves as an important step in that direction. So I want to welcome you and thank you. We have a presentation today I think that you're going to enjoy. It's going to be informative and help you understand the direction that we're headed. As usual, I usually start out every webinar with a short story, and I will keep it short. I don't know what you've been doing this summer to enjoy the outdoors, but one thing I've been doing is trying to get out on my bicycle, and I found one route that goes by a beach that has a sandy road. First time I tried to take my bicycle down that road, I followed where most of the tracks went, and you know when you hit sand that comes up over the top of your wheel on the bottom, usually you stop and the wheel slides out from under you, which is exactly what happened to me. Kind of owning it to my age and my lack of bicycle ability, I got off my bike and walked it the rest of the way. A little bit frustrated because I saw there were a lot of tracks that made it through the whole road without having to stop. The next day I came to the same road, gave it my best effort, and found that my wheel slid out from under me again. Frustrated, I took my bike and walked the rest of the road. The next day when I came to the road, I stopped and I looked at it and I noticed there was another set of tracks that went in a little different area. And it wasn't the area that I picked because it looked a little bumpier and maybe not as smooth. But I noticed a lot of those tracks made it to the end of the road without stopping. I also noticed that those tracks went in a relatively straight path without weaving. Before I had focused on where the other tire tracks were going. This time I decided I'd take this new path and focus on the end of the road. Getting up a good head of steam, focusing on the end and managing my best confidence as an older bike rider, I forged on ahead, and to my surprise, my bicycle made it through the road unhindered and made it to the end. After I got done, I was proud of myself that I had figured this out, but then I began to reflect on what I had learned there. I learned that you don't always focus on what's in front of you, but you focus on the end result. You don't always go where everybody else is going. And sometimes the path you're going to take isn't always the path that seems to always make the most sense right away. And plus, it's really important to focus on the end and what you're going towards. I know now in our society, in our country, there's a lot of unrest by a myriad of things. And a lot of that reflects on what's going to happen in schools this fall. You know that Malden Catholic this past spring did an outstanding job with distance learning and navigating the pandemic. This summer, we've watched and prayed as different guidelines and recommendations and suggestions have come out. And we've put together a team that's led by our own Mr. Jeff Smith and our nurse Elizabeth Paquette and others to check in with health organizations, and we've partnered with other schools in our network and other schools in the area to share ideas and thoughts, because I know each family is concerned, what does this fall look like? Our efforts have been geared, much like my story, to pick the path that goes straight, the path that's focused on the vision of creating the safest environment for each student, faculty, and staff member, focusing on a model that delivers the strongest educational experience for our students, realizing the desire of every student to be back in the building and regain some sense of normalcy. And it's with that our team has worked tirelessly all summer towards that end, because we're going to end up on a path that goes straight, a path that's focused on the end, and a path that we're going to be able to ride through. To do that, we need a strong team, which we have. To do that, we need advice from experts, and we have one here today with Dr. David King. But this webinar today is to help our families and us partner one step further towards what the fall is going to look like. Before I turn this over to Mr. Smith, I'll open us up in prayer. Let's go ahead and bow our heads. In the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Father, thank you for the Malden Catholic community. Thank you, Lord, for the people you've brought into our lives and how you bless us with those people. Thank you, Lord, as we move forward in a time that's unprecedented, a time that has so many questions and seems like there's so few answers, that you, our Lord, know everything. And you have promised to guide us as when we ask. You promised to lead us and help us understand. Thank you, Father, that you use people like Dr. David King, like Mr. Smith, like Nurse Paquette, to help guide us and lead us. Thank you, Father, for the webinar today. We place this all in your hands, and it's in your name we pray. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. So I'm going to turn this next step to Mr. Smith. I know he's out there somewhere to take us into the next stage of the webinar. Thank you, Mr. Smith, and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Thornburg. Good afternoon, everyone. We wanted to go over a few things and a quick update, and just to reiterate what Mr. Thornburg was talking about. We've been working with a lot of healthcare professionals. We work with a lot of organizations, the DPH, the CDC, as well as many of the schools in our network, including St. John's Prep, Severian High School, Severian out of Brooklyn. There's 13 schools in our network alone. We were working with DESE, the school, the state organization, and we've been awaiting their plans, and they keep delaying them. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to rush to make a plan that we'll have to alter drastically, but we are comfortable in where we are. One of the things I wanted to relay from Principal Redmond and Mr. Bucchino is that our schedules will be released over the weekend. So we wanted to make sure that that was known. So your student and teacher schedules will be released shortly. Our opening of school preliminary plan is to hold orientations for classes beginning on September 8th, with the first day of school officially being September 14th. I know a lot of people have seen the news lately saying the Massachusetts Teachers Organizations have recommended that schools open September 16th. We will delay a little bit, but not as long as the public schools. We will have more time for our orientations this year because we need to go through our hybrid model with our faculty and staff first, but then our students and our parents, to make sure that everybody in our community feels comfortable with the hybrid model of distance learning and in person under the new health regulations that Nurse Paquette will go into a little bit today. So what is the hybrid model? I think a lot of people have been looking at it and reading things online. It means that half of your given class will be in the school and the other half will be home distance learning. We are continuing to update our classrooms to live stream every class. So we're putting cameras in classrooms. We're getting headsets for our teachers to make sure that they can be heard and that our classes are done in the best possible way with this pandemic. So we will have in-person and distance live streaming. What will happen is there will be a Monday, Thursday cohort and a Tuesday, Friday cohort. So what that will mean is that there are certain weeks that will have a fifth day, which is the Wednesday. So the reason why we're saying certain weeks is there are weeks in our calendar year going all the way to Christmas that we only have 4 school days in the week. So for example, Veterans Day, Columbus Day, and even the first week that begins with the 8th with orientation, we have Labor Day. So we need to take into account those holidays, including the 3 we observe during Thanksgiving week. That 5th day that we're talking about, with those weeks that have the 5th day in the schedule of the Wednesdays, we're going to use that as an opportunity for academic enrichment and community building. One of the things that we saw from our surveys that we issued to parents, surveys that we issued to students, and our SWOT analysis was that we had, in the distance learning model, less time to be with our community, less time to be with our friends, and less time to feel like a school. So we're going to look to provide opportunities to build the enduring personal relationships that Malden Catholic has prided itself on since 1932. So we're putting together a comprehensive plan for this 5th day to make students feel like they are still part of Malden Catholic and still get that good community feeling that we're known for. All 7 periods will meet in a day. What we will do is we will lock periods 1 and 2 in the last period of the day. Only the middle 4 periods will rotate. So the reason why we're doing that is we want students and parents and faculties to have some sort of consistency in their day. We don't want them to be confused. Is today a blue day or a gold day? Is today blue one, gold one? We want to have a sense of normalcy when it comes to the schedule itself. So that is why we will be locking periods 1 and 2 and the last period of the day. The 4 middle periods will rotate because we will have 4 academic days in a week. Everybody needs to be conscious of what we will call our red phase. Now, all of this will go out in literature once it is complete, so I want everybody to know that. And we didn't want to release too much literature because we didn't want to create confusion in the event that we have to change something based on state guidelines. What a red phase will be is in the event that we have COVID at the school and we need to be in full distance learning, we will get a robocall out to everyone, just like the reminder for today's webinar. It will go to your email, text message, phone message, and we will say Malden Catholic is now in a red phase. Everyone is in full distance learning. When we get out of red phase, you'll get a second call that will indicate we are now going back to our blue gold schedule, and we will indicate what that means as far as blue day 1 or gold day 1. Our lunches, we're looking to get a little bit more creative with our lunches. We met with our vendor, Aramark. We will not be able to go in the back like we normally would through that serving area. So we will be having more of a grab and go style for those students that want to purchase lunches. And that will be in the front part of the serving area with tables and members of our Aramark food service. We are setting up areas in the courtyard. We're setting up 3 picnic tables in the courtyard for students to eat in. We are also setting up areas in the cafeteria where we will space out and we will clearly mark where students can sit. We will also set up an area in the gymnasium, and we will also be getting a tent for outdoor seating. So there will be 4 sections for students and faculty and staff to have their lunches. We are taking tables and chairs out of the cafeteria, so we don't want to make sure that everybody is properly spaced when it comes to eating lunch. We're also doing that in our classrooms. Our classrooms, we've taken out the desks so that there are only a maximum of 15 in a classroom based on the square footage. And we've also marked areas where our faculty will go to properly deliver instruction. I want to throw this out there that if any parent or student is interested in full-time distance learning, if you're interested in learning from home 100%, be for a variety of reasons, maybe it's health, maybe it's just social emotional wellness concern, please email me. Let me know if you are interested in 100% distance learning. We're going to have a question and answer period at the end. I ask you to utilize the chat section. Nurse Paquette is going to be talking now, but following her will be Dr. David King. We're extremely excited to have him on the broadcast with us. At this time, it is my privilege to introduce our school nurse, Miss Elizabeth Paquette, who has been here for a long time. All of you know her, even our incoming 9th graders know her. I don't think anybody realizes the amount of work that she's done in preparing Malden Catholic, not only to be a safe environment, but also one that is academically enriched, to make sure that we are giving the best product we can and to follow our 5 values that we truly believe in. So in all the work that she's done, I know we can't give her a round of applause because we're on a webinar, but I know everybody at home wants to thank you, Nurse Paquette, for all the work that you've been doing, and we're all interested to hear what you have to say, given our health updates as well. Nurse Paquette, it's all you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Hello, my Lances. I miss you. I miss you all. I'm not supposed to wave, but I'm waving to all of you. and they tell me not to move around too much. I move too much, but I'm so excited to be able to talk to all of the parents and all of the students. I think you know how much I miss you and I love you. And I think you also know that I am committed to your safety and your security while you're with us. And in doing so, I want to tell you that right now, there are still some uncertainties with the Department of Education and Secondary Education and the Department of Public Health. So we're still working out specific guidelines and protocols for if a student or faculty or staff member does become positive. So we are working diligently on those to make sure that we can get a flawless plan that will be just well executed. So I want you to feel safe about that. I want you to feel secure about that. I also want you to understand a few necessary things. I need the students, all of you, I'm asking you to do your part. I'm asking the parents to support us and helping our students do your part. You all know very well, you've chosen Malden Catholic. You've chosen us because we are a mission-based school. We are committed to one another. We are committed to the care and the love for our fellow man and for the safety and security of each other. You know that. You understand those Bavarian spiritual values that we talk about all the time. And we also know that the Bavarian brothers have a motto that says, in harmony, small things grow. So I'm asking you that you all work together with me. Now, with the understanding that there is no one special thing that's going to work that will mitigate all of the risk that we have in dealing with this virus. So I'm going to explain to you that this is a combination, a serious combination of actions that I want you to take and that I expect you to take in part of being in caring for one another. So, number one, I want you to be self-aware. Be aware of how you feel. Tell your parents how you feel. If you don't feel well, if you feel off in any way, if you think that you feel different, you feel like you may be becoming ill, that you may have a slight fever or a sore throat or a sudden loss of sense of smell or taste. I want you to be aware of those things. If you develop a cough or you have any of the symptoms that I'm sure you have seen through all of the COVID-19 literature, and we will be going over those relentlessly as you return to school. But most importantly is I want you to pay attention to how you feel. We are looking into an app that will ask you a question every morning and give you the answer, yes, you should come to school, or no, you should maybe speak to your primary care physician. We're working on that as we speak. We also are going to ask that everyone wear a mask. And they really are the single most important measure in preventing the spread of this virus. That being said, my mask protects you and your mask protects me because we care for one another. So, when I talk about masks, I want you to know that I want a mask, one that will cover your nose and your mouth and come underneath your chin. I don't want any bandanas. We won't be having those. We won't be having any of the gaiters. Gaiters are very difficult to keep up. They're very hot. You have to pull them up over your ears actually to keep them up over your nose. They're made of breathable material usually, and they're not as effective as a mask. We want to make sure that there are no droplets dropping out the bottom, which would happen with a bandana or with just a face shield. So we're asking everyone to have a mask. We are in the process of ordering masks right now and obtaining those for you. We will be giving a couple of masks to each student and faculty and staff members. The other thing I need you to do is I need you to practice your hand hygiene. Every time you touch something, I want you to wash your hands. If that's not available, you'll need to use the hand sanitizer. And I know that that can be kind of difficult, but every room will have hand sanitizer. You will have hand sanitizer on the entrances and on the exits of the doorways. We are working with that. We've developed a protocol for that and how you can obtain all of that in your classroom. We're going to ask that you remember, and I know it's difficult. You're so excited to see one another. I'm excited to see you. I want to hug everybody. You know me, I'm a hugger, but it's very difficult. So we need to practice that 6-foot distance. And those of you in summer workouts, I know that Mr. Raycraft has been reminding you of that. And I know that he tells me that you've been practicing that. So I'm very proud of you. Thank you for doing that. I know that it's going to be difficult, but I also know that you're Lancers and that you're going to rise to this occasion. You know that that's what is expected, and I know that you will do that for me and for each other. The other thing, as Mr. Smith has alluded to, you're going to be assigned to a cohort, which is a fancy name for a group, blue or gold, and you'll probably have assigned seating in your classroom. I need you to maintain that assigned seating and maintain those groups. And I'm asking you not to really mix with the other groups. The reason we have these two groups is to prevent and mitigate or lessen the spread of the virus. So if you're within your own sort of blue bubble or gold bubble and not mixing with the other group, we can lessen the exposure and therefore the risk. So we're asking you to do all of that. I know that we're going to come back to school and we're going to have a very safe, and we're going to be committed to the health and safety. And I know that everyone here and everyone around the school and in the school is going to do their part. I have the absolute confidence in my Lancers. I miss you all so much. It's been such a difficult summer not being able to see you all and go down to workouts and do all of those things. But I'm committed to maintaining my social distancing practices and to keep myself healthy as well as my family. You should know that I have a grandson due any day now, and I'm waiting for him excitedly. So I'm going to ask you to pray for my new family member, and I know you will, as I pray for you every day. So right now, I would really like to invite you to enjoy the next presentation. I have the honor and the privilege of introducing my dear friend, Dr. David King. Dr. King and I did a podcast for the National Association of School Nurses, I think about 4 or 5 years ago. That's when we first met. I took his Stop the Bleed and tourniquet training class that he is an expert in. And I was impressed then, and I'm more impressed now. He is volunteered to be our medical advisor. He is an answered prayer for this school nurse and for my new school nurse, who is Mrs. Carol Olive, who's very excited to meet all of you as well. So let me just tell you a little bit about Dr. King. Dr. King received his medical degree from the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. He's a fellow in the American College of Surgeons. He's an associate professor of surgery at Harvard Medical School. He's a trauma surgeon at Mass General Hospital. Dr. King is currently a colonel in the U.S. Army with almost 20 years of service with multiple combat deployments within the special operations community, and he has been focused on anti-terrorism missions. I know you join me in thanking Dr. King for his service to all of us and our country. Dr. King has research interests that sort of boggle the mind. His research interests are in bleeding control and hemorrhage control, non-invasive monitoring for trauma triage, human athletic performance. He also has multiple federally funded biomedical research grants. Dr. King is the principal inventor of rescue foam, which is in addition to several other inventions and multiple patents on medical devices. He has overseen 150 peer-reviewed scientific publications and book chapters reflecting his research interests. He's on the editorial board of multiple peer-reviewed scientific journals as well. He currently remains the regional presidential surgeon for the past 2 presidents. He coordinates the medical care for the President of the United States whenever the President travels to the New England region. He's also on the worldwide COVID-19 task force for the Department of Defense, and he's also contributing to Mayor Marty Walsh's COVID-19 task force for the city of Boston. Clinically, Dr. King's primary interests are in surgical abdominal catastrophes and in the care of COVID-19 patients. When not working at the hospital or with the military, Dr. King trains as an ultra endurance athlete. He currently has completed over 50 marathons and 11 Ironman triathlons. He regularly races all over the world. I'm honored to say that Dr. King is joining us tonight. This wonderful man illustrates our MC values of humility and simplicity and compassion and trust and zeal. And we welcome David King. And we thank you, Dr. King, for your service to our community.
Elizabeth, thank you so much. You know, my goal to engaging here is to try to help our student body and our faculty to return to school in the safest way possible. And of course, that means a variety of risk mitigation strategies, and nothing is risk-free. Probably the only risk-free thing to do is to stay home in your bedroom. But it is time to return to school. And there's a variety of mitigating strategies that we can take for our kids to go back to school safely. I have a daughter attending Malden Catholic in the fall. I'm very excited. She's very excited. And so I have my own personal interest in trying to understand the ways in which we can reconvene our student body and the faculty in a safe way that reduces risk of COVID-19 as much as possible. The first overarching principle I'd like to touch on is creating this new, well, maybe not a new culture, but creating and validating a culture of cooperation and self-awareness. And this is a culture that is required for the school, for any school, to reopen successfully. And let me drill down on a couple of details for you. It is, to many experts' eyes, mine included, it is impossible to reopen safely without a universal mask policy, as Elizabeth pointed out. And what that means is not just saying that we're going to wear masks, but by leading from the front, by creating the right example for our kids in the ways in which we behave as parents and as faculty, and modeling the behavior we'd like our children to have. You know, if wearing a mask is not part of your culture at home when you go out to the grocery store or shopping and so on, probably now is the time to start creating that model for our kids. So when we return to school, this universal mask wearing policy doesn't come as a giant surprise. I know it shouldn't be, but I also know that there are plenty of families and cultures that do not endorse this. As Nurse Paquette pointed out, masks do not prevent you from being infected with COVID-19. The mask is a social contract. It's essentially an agreement between two people who are near each other, and each of them saying, I'm going to wear a mask so you don't get sick, and you're going to wear a mask so I don't get sick. And what the mask does is it just prevents the respiratory droplets that we all create in our normal speech that create a plume in front of us, and it prevents that respiratory droplet plume from aerosolizing and floating around in the air and other people inhaling it and getting sick. So the mask is not for you. It's for all the other people that you love and care about, and it's for your friends and your faculty. And the way in which we think about this has to be multidimensional and with some high degree of second, third, and fourth order thinking. That is, you may think, well, my friend is perfectly healthy. What difference does it make if this friend gets exposed? Because the odds are they will most likely be fine, particularly children. It's not guaranteed, but the data suggests that. However, what is almost unthinkable is having COVID-19 being transmitted from one person to another who brings it home to a sick grandmother or a parent with a pre-existing condition. And if they get ill, their illness could be life-threatening. So I just want to encourage everyone to think second and third and fourth order. Maybe it doesn't matter to you as an individual if you get sick and you say, well, I'm healthy, I'll be okay. But we need to think about the people who aren't immediately around you while we're at school, and what will happen if the virus gets transmitted back home to parents, grandparents, or even other family members, or even perfect strangers at a restaurant where you might take your mask off to eat, and you create droplets that get transmitted to a perfect stranger who maybe is not in excellent health. So I just want to reinforce that the mask is a social contract. It basically says, I care about you. And it's important that our Malden Catholic family cares about each other. And wearing a mask is just the very first step of that process. The second part of this is having a high degree of self-awareness. So 2020 is the death of the parents, the death of the attitude of parents saying, you have to be bleeding out your eyes to stay home from school. We need to normalize staying home from school if our children are not feeling well. And I understand as a parent myself, that can be a difficult ask. But in this year and in these conditions, and in the current set of circumstances, we cannot afford to send a potentially sick child to school. And that means encouraging our children to have some insight and for them to feel free to say, I don't feel right, I might have a fever, my throat is scratchy, or my nose is runny. And for us as parents to be particularly sensitive and aware of how our children are feeling, and even if they don't admit it, maybe as parents recognizing that, hey, my daughter looks a little off today, maybe I should inquire and ask some questions, or my son just doesn't seem like he's on his A game. Maybe I should inquire and see if he's feeling well, and be empowered to say, you know what, maybe this is not safe to go to school today, and we'll just distance learn today and until we're feeling better and are free of symptoms. And this needs to become for the time being, our new normal. We need to be empowered as parents and as students to say, I don't feel right. I think I'm going to stay home and distance learn today. And again, I understand as a parent myself, the problems that can generate on the morning of juggling work and school commitments. I understand it, but we also have to understand our social and loving commitment to all of our fellow Malden Catholic families. And again, the second, third, and fourth order thinking, if we send a potentially sick child to school and they spread the virus to another student who brings it home to a sick parent or sick grandparent, the results can be disastrous. Additionally, I don't know about your kids, but my daughter desperately wants to go back to school. Both of them do. And a confirmed sick case at school would put us into this red phase and a variety of downstream consequences that very well may end up with all of us back in permanent distance learning. So I would just implore us all to have more insight into how our children are feeling and encourage our children to have insight into how they are feeling, and create a culture where it's okay for them to say, hey, mom and dad, maybe I don't feel perfectly right today. And that should generate a discussion that maybe results in staying home that day and distance learning. And one of the relatively ubiquitous findings for for patients with COVID-19 infection, pardon me, is the presence of fever. And so we have to end the culture of, here's some Tylenol, now you don't have a fever, you feel better, and go to school. This is probably, was probably never a safe approach. It definitely is not a safe approach this year. And that is a culture that needs to go away, at least for the time being. Additionally, I'll point out that the plan we've developed to risk mitigate opening school is based upon the current conditions in the Commonwealth and the current slope of the improvement of COVID-19 cases in the Commonwealth. What that means is we will adjust on the fly. If there's a really big fall spike or a substantial spike in cases in 2 weeks from now or a month from now, this entire plan may change, and we may be back on another webinar briefing what does right look like in the middle of a new spike, and the risk-benefit balance of having our kids back in school and the enthusiasm for learning and the important social interactions of children and social learning that takes place at school may be lost if we have to go back to this to a red phase approach. And I hope that never happens, but please know that we will be following these numbers carefully and adjusting our back to school plan as might become necessary. Additionally, we'd like to have a long-term view of this, and that is, if the slope of improvement in the Commonwealth continues the way it is without a fall spike, and there's some reason to believe that we should be optimistic about this, we think that a reasonable long-term goal is that we may be able to return to so-called business as usual or school as we used to know it in January of 2021. It's difficult to imagine a universal mask policy going away before Christmas, but it's not that difficult to imagine, assuming the slope of cases doesn't change in the Commonwealth or continues to improve in the Commonwealth. It's not that difficult to imagine that it might be safe to imagine a school experience like it was last year or the year before, or as maybe we've traditionally imagined it, occurring perhaps in January of 2019. It's pretty inconceivable that we'll be abandoning masks between January and Christmas of this year. I just point that out so we can adjust and manage expectations of our sons and daughters who are attending school, and the faculty for that matter, that this is not indefinite. There potentially is an end in sight, and it would be reasonable with the current slope of cases to think that might occur in January, understanding that it also might not. But I think it's often helpful for our psychology as we plan for an experience that is going to last months to have a potential end in sight, and perhaps maybe that having that potential end in sight might create some motivation and enthusiasm for compliance with these requirements over the next span of months until Christmas. Sometimes just knowing that the end is in sight to a set of uncomfortable circumstances may create the motivation to endure through the end. So I just point that out because it's a possibility, it's a real possibility, but it is not a certainty. The last thing I'd like to say is no one at school, certainly not me, certainly not anyone else, knows the details of any one individual's coexisting medical conditions. And just because school is opening, and just because there are a variety of risk mitigation strategies in place, doesn't necessarily mean it's safe for everyone. And only you can determine that for yourselves and for your children. I use this example over and over again, but if you have a child who had a recent bone marrow transplant, I would suggest that that is someone who is, despite our risk mitigation strategies, is probably not safe to return to school. The same is true, the same can be said for someone who has a family member with a condition like that. And no one can know that except any individual. And it's important that, yes, there is risk mitigation at school, and most people who are healthy will likely be safe, but nothing is 100%. And if you think that you or your children or a family member have a medical condition whereby you might be particularly susceptible to severe morbidity, if you were to get a COVID-19 infection, it might be appropriate to distance learn this year. I understand that can be, or could be, or is likely a psychologically painful and difficult decision to make, because I can see the enthusiasm amongst students that I've met in this process and faculty members who are really excited to come back to school. And I'm really excited for my children to be back in school. And I'm really excited for the faculty to be back in school. But this might not be the right decision for every single individual, and only you can self-evaluate and determine whether or not this is a reasonable decision to make for you and for your family. If there's any doubt about whether or not you might be one of those individuals, I would encourage you to consult your physician. And I am perfectly happy to engage and offer advice in a HIPAA protected way. You're welcome to reach out. I'm happy to discuss your particular case if that's of help to you. But frankly, that should really probably be a discussion between you and your personal physician. I'm welcome. You're welcome to use me as a sounding board. I've taken care of many hundreds of COVID-19 patients in the ICU here. I've published on it, and so I have a high degree of insight into what this infection means to a variety of populations of patients. But I would just encourage each individual adult and student to carefully examine whether or not they might be a particularly at-risk population, and whether or not returning to school for their children and for their immediate family, their living conditions, their family contacts, whether or not that is safe for that particular family and individual. Nurse Paquette, I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. King. That was amazing.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. King. We're truly blessed you to be with us and share your insight and actually help us develop this plan too. So we truly appreciate all your efforts into it. We're going to open this up a little bit to questions and answers, but before we get to that, I want to answer some of the questions that have already come in. And some of them are repeated. I also want you to know that at the conclusion of this webinar, like we always do, we'll send out a question and answer for all the questions that were submitted, and try to do the best we can to accurately answer your specific question. One of the questions that keeps coming up is the cohorts. How are they being split? Siblings will be in the same cohort. So if you're in a blue or a gold, your entire family, we want to recognize that. We want to make it as easy as possible for families. So families with siblings, they will be in the same cohort. So how are we splitting? I'll just give you an example of a class. Let's say Miss Lauren Smith's English class. She has 24 in the class, 12, as best as we can. We're going to try to split the classes. We're going to start with siblings, then we're going to start with the alphabet. And the reason why we're going to go the alphabet is kind of the old school gym class, 1, 2, 1, 2. And that is because we want to separate lockers as well. We want to separate homerooms, and that's done alphabetically. So we're going to do the very best we can. She may have 13 students in front of her, and she may have 11 students at home on blue day 1 learning virtually through a live stream taped class. Next day would be gold day 1. The group that was in front of her the previous day will now be home learning virtually, and now the 11 are in front of her. So that is how we will split it. And once again, we will be videoing and taping and recording every class for review for students that have technical glitches or other issues. That will happen. A written document of our plan will be sent out to everyone after it is analyzed and approved by healthcare professionals like Dr. King and state officials, just to make sure that in the event CDC or the DPH, the city of Malden comes out with different regulations than they have right now, we want to just make sure that we're following every protocol for the betterment of everyone in our community, our students, our faculty, our staff, and those at home. Because we don't want anything to get home from the school. We will also release a re-entry video. We'll do a mock classroom setup of how it will run, how it will look, and we will walk you through the steps of that. I want to reiterate that students will not miss out on the academics. We had an academic council, which is a meeting with all of our department chairs and administration on Monday. We met with all of our faculty and staff on Tuesday. The idea is just like what we did in the spring when we stopped school on March 13th, to continue the curriculum, continue the academics. And we're very proud of how we continue to progress based on agendas and syllabus provided by our teachers in our full distance learning model. Now, some people are worried about the Wednesdays. And some people may comment in reference to partial schedule. This is not a partial schedule. And what I mean by that is, in our normal 7-day rotation, we would drop one period every day anyways. What we are doing now is we are dropping all the periods on one day, the Wednesday, because we are meeting every other day. So that is how we got to the plan that we're doing. We also want to make sure that the Wednesday concept takes into account friends from different cohorts of the same grade. And we want to give them an opportunity to be together in a safe environment that creates an opportunity to strengthen their relationships and still build the sense of community at Malden Catholic. So that is why we are looking at the idea of the Wednesdays to do that. We will also look on the Wednesdays to provide extra opportunities for other classes that may need, for example, our AP Sciences, extra lab time that they wouldn't get under this current model. So we will look to do, as I said before, an academic enrichment portion of it. There was some questions about athletics, and I know Mr. Raycraft has been working tirelessly with the MIAA and actually the National Federation of High Schools. Right now, it's not completely official, but they're looking for practices and tryouts to start on September 14th, okay? New students, you know, there's a concern out there for new students as far as we don't know a lot of people. How are we gonna get acclimated to that? So what we are looking to do is advance our advisory program, which happens during the year. So students will be able to meet each other virtually in small groups days prior to our even orientations. So we're looking at possibly the middle of August to do a couple of days where 9th graders, boys and girls, will have the opportunity to meet other members of their student body prior to their orientation. So there'll be more information about that. Want to reiterate that masks are required. Masks are required. Masks that were chosen and certified by Malden Catholic that will be sold through Collegiate House only will be the masks that we will allow at Malden Catholic. Now, we will also have mask breaks built into the day. They will be built into every single period. What we are looking at right now, and we're trying to get it approved, and Dr. King's been on board with this, is that once the class begins, we will have a 5-minute class break, mask break. Class will begin, but the mask will be off. Ms. Paquette is working on a safety protocol as far as having Ziploc bags, so you can put your mask in your Ziploc bag. You will sit, nobody will move. We will conduct the class. After 5 minutes, a special bell will ring, a different bell than the changing of the classes through our PA system throughout the school to indicate that masks need to come back on. 30 minutes of the class will be conducted with the mask on. 5 minutes prior to the end of the class, another small chime on the bell will remind everybody it's another mask break. So we're looking to get 10 minutes of a mask break every single period. And that is going to be really something good for us. And it's also great for our facilities guys who have worked tirelessly to indicate on the floors separation of social distancing, 6-foot distance. So we got to make sure that everybody is in compliance with this. We also want to reinforce that students with any symptoms must not come to school in person. But if they feel well enough, you can still be with the class via distance learning. So for example, if I'm supposed to be in school on the blue day and I don't feel well, I have any of these symptoms that Nurse Paquette and Dr. King are talking about, you stay home and you can actually attend the class with distance learning. You just need to notify the school as if we would do normally. You do not come back in on the next day though. So you would still distance learn on the next day, which would be your typical distance learning day. We are still trying to determine transportation protocols because we're still waiting for some updates from the state on that. So we still have not determined that. Ms. Paquette, any other things you'd like to talk about?
I think you've done a very thorough job, Mr. Smith, thinking of all the ins and outs of this. And again, we are attempting to make it as comfortable and as easy and as fun as school can possibly be while still being safe. Safety is our #1 priority. We are going to ask you to comply with all of these requests, that you take your mask off. You're not going to be able to talk a whole lot. Nobody's going to be shouting across the classroom because they have their mask off. We're going to ask that you remember that this is just a break to give everyone a breath of fresh air, so to speak. We will be, Mr. Smith, I know that Mr. Kachaputi has been working diligently on the ventilating system. In fact, they've been in my office for a couple of days now, and we have arranged for extra filters, and we also have the ability in the past few years, we have done some major upgrades on our ventilating system. We have put millions of dollars into our ventilating system and our air conditioning system. And we have the ability, and we are blessed with this, to actually turn our ventilating system so we get fresh air into the building every 15 or 20 minutes, a couple of times an hour. And that would be 100% fresh air. We would have complete airflow changeover. And the CDC is recommending that we do that. It's akin to opening your windows all the time. And yes, we'll be opening windows too, because the CDC and Dr. King has reassured us that being outside is great. It's a win at all times. And so we're trying to bring the fresh air in. And we're working hard on that and installing all of the extra parts to that ventilating system. So there's a lot of work has been done behind the scenes. I need to thank Mr. Smith. He has been a rock through all of this. It's since last March when this all began. And I would look at him and say, oh goodness, what are we going to do now? And Mr. Smith would have the answer. He's very creative. And more than that, he's a really dear friend to me and to all of us at Malden Catholic. His love of Malden Catholic knows no bounds, that's for certain. And we're very proud of him.
Thank you, Nurse Paquette. A couple more questions, and then, like I said, we're going to reiterate these in our question and answer piece. Can students choose to go to school for all 4 days, just like they can stay home all week? The answer to that is no. At some point, and we're hopeful that this is just something that will get us through the first semester. But if you're in your cohort, you're in your cohort. If you feel as though you need to stay home for those 4 days, you will not be penalized for distance learning. You will not be penalized if you feel ill and those symptoms. No, you will not. Another question about how the lunches will work. Are students eating in the classroom? I'll reiterate what I said before. Students are not eating in the classroom. We will have 4 separate areas for that. That'll include a socially distanced cafeteria, picnic tables in our courtyard, which is something we've never been done, which is interesting because every year student council asks to do that. So I'm pretty pleased that we're going to do that. a small section of the gymnasium where we will pull one of our giant, I forget the name of it, but the divider in the middle down. We'll have a socially distanced area in there. We'll also have a tent for outdoor seating as well. So that I just want to make sure that that is known. Will there be club meetings? There will be club meetings. Club meetings will happen virtually to start the year. School will get out at 2:15 this year. So school will be 8 to 2:15. And the reason being is in the event that we have athletics in the fall, we have other extracurricular activities. If a student is in the opposite cohort and is at home distance learning, we want to give them the opportunity to get here in a safe manner so that they can participate in the afternoon. So there will be more details about that. You know, want to reiterate again, they are Malden Catholic only masks. So once again, it's just like Dr. King said and Nurse Paquette said, we've gone through many materials. We've gone through many vendors to make sure that these are appropriate. These will be MC masks that will be sold through Collegiate House, and they will be available within 30 days of purchase. You can purchase them earlier. They will be navy blue with an MC right in the side of them. They will be highlighted on the side, all right? So I just want to make sure that they'll screen printed, not embroidered. That would defeat the purpose. So we will continue to work with them. Once again, you know, there's a lot of similar questions. So when we release the questions and answers, I would ask that you review those. Again, anyone that is interested in the 100% distance learning, please email me and let me know about that. We will continue to work on this. And once again, we're going to release our written plan and also a video of an actual classroom and what is going to take place and our expectations on a daily basis. One last thing before we break as far as entry goes. In the morning, there will be a different style of a drop-off. So in order to mitigate our entry points, we will only use 2, and they will be split by the divisions. So for example, in the morning, anybody that is in the cohort designated for that specific day will be dropped off. If you're in the girls division, you'll be dropped off at door 1, which is the main entry to the school. And the reason being is it's a safety precaution for us with thermal scanners, thermal temperature scanners, which we have purchased. And also students have an easier way to get to their lockers. For the boys, you will enter through door 11, which is the rear entry door by the rotary. There will also be another thermal temperature scanner there. This is done to ensure safety and that we can limit the amount of students coming into one entry point at a time and do it safely. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming today and joining us on this webinar. I really want to thank Dr. King for everything that he's done with us, his expertise. He continues to work with us, and obviously our love to Ms. Paquette for her work and tireless effort in putting the best product forward and making sure that everyone in our community, our students, our faculty, our staff, our parents, and all of our loved ones are safe and getting the Malden Catholic experience that they deserve.
Hey, Mr. Smith, yeah, before we leave, first of all, I have to say a couple parents, Nurse Paquette, have complimented you on your pillow that's behind you there. So I just want to give a shout out that you got some compliments on that. All right, I'm looking here, Mr. Smith. It looks like that is the bulk of the main questions. There's still a few there, but we'll catch those on the rebound when we print out all these and go through them and distribute them. This presentation will be on our website with a link as well, so parents can reach out. I think Dr. King availed himself as a resource, so we'll probably have something there about contacting him as well. I feel like this webinar has just been a great step, and Dr. King, I can't thank you enough. I mean, having someone with your knowledge and expertise here for us as a resource means a lot. It really does. So thank you. Okay, Mr. Smith, Nurse Paquette, thank you as well. As always, you're coming through for us in a very strong fashion, and we're going to be in a much better shape because of all the hard work and dedication, because the two of you and your team that's been working through this. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to all our families who attended. Mr. Smith is our contact person. If you have other questions, we'll put out the video and the questions as a follow-up as well. So thank you, everyone.